America. You have a choice on what you believe. You have a choice on whether or not you wear a mask.
But if we don't actually start acting as human beings, we're
Host of Conservative Daily Podcast, Joe Oltmann.
I infiltrated Antifa. We know about these Antifa journalists, and we're coming for them.
So what are you afraid of?
God is at the wheel.
2024 is the last day.
the radical left's agenda has declared war on the everyday American.
Exposing the corruption of election fraud. Ladies and gentlemen, please stand and greet Joe Oltmann.
Welcome back. I am on a remote location. I'll be here for the next couple of days, so you'll have me here today. We have a couple of interviews today that I think you'll find interesting. We have an attorney, Ron Coleman, been deep involved in a lot of different things in the political world. And then later on in the show, we're going to have John Tigan join us. John Tig Tigan, Benghazi, 13 hours, basically was on the roof of a compound in Benghazi and protected Americans he didn't know. So he's going to be talking a little bit with us today as well. I want to jump right into kind of some of the things that you guys probably are not shocked about and you probably already heard about, but we're going to be asking Ron Coleman a little bit about this. And that is, we have this thing called the Constitution. The Constitution is the First Amendment, Second Amendment, Third Amendment. Most people don't even know what certain amendments are, but they know about the first one, freedom of speech. Freedom to have the ability to redress your grievances. SCOTUS kind of did a left turn on us. And when I say that it is them versus us, it is this establishment, this fraternity versus the American people, nothing could be more clear than the Murphy versus Missouri. So the Supreme Court this week ruled in this case, it defines how far the government can go to censor Americans. Apparently, they can go pretty far. So let's go ahead and take a look at the Gateway Pundit article. Supreme Court rules horribly on most important free speech case in the century. Murphy versus Missouri, with Gateway Pundit's Jim Hoft as one of 5 top plaintiffs, is rejected by the court. Rejected. In a stunning 6-3 decision, the U.S. Supreme Court has ruled that the Biden administration's policy of deleting, suppressing, and deplatforming specific people, topics, and ideas is immune from suit, leaving no one able to challenge it in court. The ruling, written by Justice Amy Barrett, came down with the following key decision. Neither the individual nor the state plaintiffs have established Article 3 standing to seek an injunction against any defendant. In sum, the court ruled that 2 different types of parties, states and individuals harmed by the government policies, do not have standing to sue. Now, I'll point this out if I can. Do not have standing. So let's go back to November of 2020. Let's go back to the Texas v. Pennsylvania, where it went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court rejected the idea that they could hear it based on standing, that Texas did not have standing over Pennsylvania. Now, keep in mind, it's a presidential election. President Trump had what we already know has happened now. So we can go back in time and look at the court rulings in Pennsylvania specifically. And those court rulings show that what they did in the election in 2020 was unconstitutional according to their state constitution. It determined the outcome of the election in 2020 and whether or not Joe Biden even made it into office. Now, carry down the fact that we're now finding out that over 300,000 ballots down in Georgia are missing. They don't exist. They can't find them. Now, if you remember correctly, way back in January of 2021, right before January 6th, there was this ballot truck that was filled with ballots, or excuse me, shredder truck that was filled with ballots. And at the time, the head of the DHS, which was Chad Wolf, turned that over to GBI saying, well, it's outside our jurisdiction. Elections are state, and that they don't have authority over those elections. Therefore, even though it's a federal election that these ballots were on, they have no ability to look into them. So the reason why I put all this stuff together is because as we start looking through this decision, you see that people don't have standing against the government to censor them. And one of the things that's happened to me is I've been censored on nearly every platform. Actually, I've been censored on every platform. So why? Why would the government have authority, and why would the individual nor the state not have standing in order to sue Biden and the rest of his regime have done to us? And why is it the government has become the beacon of misinformation and disinformation, and yet the people are not allowed to point out the truth? In addition to this, Justice Barrett let the government off the hook for the censorship regime the government created and maintained. And here's a key passage. Platforms have independent incentives to moderate content and often exercise their own judgment. To be sure, the record reflects that the government defendants played a role in at least some of the platform's moderation choices. But the Fifth Circuit, in attributing every platform decision to at least in part to the defendants, glossed over complexities in the evidence. If you were to go back in time to the 1800s, as recently as the 1800s, raping a black woman would be considered almost a non-crime. As we start looking at some of the crimes that are being committed against people here and some of the things that we face as Americans, in essence, that's what they're saying. That's what this Supreme Court that doesn't want to cover free speech. It's not as much as that it gave the authority to the government that we should be worried about. It's that they didn't check or give the ability for us to check untruths stated by the government. In other words, again, we have another qualified immunity, that the government is immune from prosecution. The government is immune and can do whatever it wants to its subjects, you, the subject, and that they can kind of say and do whatever they want. And even if they lie to you, it's like, yeah, you can't sue us. And even if you lie to the state, much like they did in COVID, can't sue them either. There is a portion of the Constitution that also says that if at some point the government becomes tyrannical, that is the duty of the people, not the obligation, but the duty of the people to throw them out on their heads. I don't see any other way. I don't see where we're at. If we're not there, I don't know where we are. Do you remember the Dobbs decision being leaked? Well, we have another leak at the Supreme Court. So let me put all this stuff together so you understand what I'm talking about. So you have the ability for the government to lie to you, and while they're lying to you, they can go to much of the social media platforms, which, by the way, are infiltrated by CIA and FBI and people that have left these organizations to go work in a social media. And then they can suppress the truth there and punish you and make you almost invisible while propping up all of these lies. And in the middle of that, they can leak. Now, again, I don't want to make this about me, but I do want to look at some similarities here. The federal judge in Colorado that said in the Clay Clark v. Eric Coomer case that I had to divulge my sources and that it would be under a protection order. They would protect the identity of the person that gave me access to the Antifa call. They would protect the identity. And by the way, I'm a first party, so I was on the call. But they want me to give up who gave me sources to Eric Coomer. We have a guest. Is a guest here? Is Ron in the house? All right, Ron is here. Joining us is our guest, Ron Coleman. I want to tell you a little bit about him. I've watched a lot of the work you've done, Ron, which is pretty amazing.
Thank you.
You're a trademark, commercial, and litigation lawyer, but you've dabbled in politics for some time, and you are not a fan of being quiet.
It's a fair way of putting it.
What do you make of what we're dealing with first the Supreme Court ruling against the Murphy versus Missouri, and how do you think that ultimately affects the outcome of the 2024 election and what these social media platforms are able to do in the future?
Well, there are a couple of important points to remember about Murphy. One is that it was a ruling on an injunction. Didn't really go to the ultimate merits of the case. That's not to say that I think it was correctly decided, but to be fair, when Murphy came out, it struck us all as a little too good to be true. Those of us who are very active in this area of practice, and it was a little bit too good to be true, at least as a preliminary injunction. When you ask a court to enter a preliminary injunction, you're really saying there's pretty much only one way this case can go on the facts. So, Judge, you decide the law, that's your job. And if we're right and we've established irreparable harm, you should put a stop to it now with an injunction. So the problem with Murthy was that there's the standing problem, and there's also the factual problem. I think you made a very good point. It's very hard to see how anyone can look at this record and be a living, breathing creature with operating brain cells and not know what's happening. There's no real rational to the direct cause and effect of what the government is doing and what the social media platforms did. And weighing that in concert with the damage being done, as well as the obvious overall illegality of what we're talking, not only illegality, but unconstitutionality of it from a free speech perspective, it's a very hard to understand how, at least, I mean, look, Roberts, we understand. He's got an agenda that is not constitutional. It is some kind of higher value. It is protecting the institution. I have argued in the past that there's probably some value to that. There's probably some reason, there's probably something to be said for maintaining some equity and respect for the court, because there are times when we sort of are able to bank on that, and when he's also been able to get justices to move his way on some really important other decisions. But I think they blew it with this one.
Well, don't you think they blew it? I mean, and looking at this, don't you think they blew it? And we go back to 2020. Doesn't this kind of, the get out of jail free card on standing? You say that you have to have brain cells in your head and not see what's happening. We can go back to the Texas v. Pennsylvania, where Roberts said that there's no standing. It later came out that Roberts was running in there saying that they're rioting in the streets, and that ultimately was the decision that led down to not looking at the evidence. And then I
think the rioting in the street story was debunked.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Yeah,
right.
Because by that time, remember, we were already locked down, and the Supreme Court had not met in person for months. There was no running around. But it is a narrative. It's truthy. It's not a true story, but it reflects what probably, I don't know that it happened. I don't think Roberts is afraid of rioting in the streets. I do think that he's afraid of being considered a political hack. The irony is that anyone who would call him a political hack is going to call him a political hack regardless of what he does. And that's what the people who try to maintain respectability often learn the hard way. Be that as it may, that's who Roberts is. And one of the things, Joe, that I'm always trying to get across to people, I saw it yesterday, as I've seen it so many other times. He's compromised, or the justices are compromised. They've got something on them. And people, that's not true. These are the squarest people in the world. No one has anything on them. This is who they are.
All right, so let me be the arbiter of reality for you. Kanjani can't tell us who a woman is. I mean, that's not very square, Ron.
No. But I'm talking about the compromise in the sense of personal life, that they've got, that there's dirt on them. Connie Brown is not is not an intellectually honest person, but she is who she is. Sotomayor is who she is. Roberts is who he is. He's a freaking Boy Scout, but he has made it his career to succeed. People who succeed to the level of becoming Supreme Court justices are experts at, I don't want to say playing the system, but negotiating the system.
Yeah.
They know how to make it work in a way that guys like you and I don't. So we're here on independent media saying things that will never get us onto Fox, much less onto, CNN. And that's just the way the world spins.
All right, so let's hypothetically say that they're square people, and to a large degree, I probably could agree with that. I think that it'd be difficult. You talk about intentionally dishonest or intellectually dishonest. I see a lot of that happening in the judiciary, whether we're talking about the state level or we're talking about the federal level. How do you how do you
It's been
square
a disaster. I'm sorry, I'm dropping you, Joe, but I'm just so animated about this. I've done a lot of videos on this topic.
Oh.
The failure of I once ran a poll a couple of years ago. Right after the election, what is of the three branches of government, which is the branch that failed the most? And the correct choice, which is the judiciary, was not chosen. It has been a disaster, although to a large extent, and you asked right before I came on, why does this still keep going on? The reason it keeps going on to a large extent is the fault of the legislature. Every time a Supreme Court takes a statute and reads it in a way that is obviously inconsistent with the way that statute was written, Congress has an opportunity to put on their big boy pants and take a vote and say, in case it wasn't clear, Supreme Court, we've just amended the statute so that it reads the way we thought it was pretty obvious it read. They've almost never done that. The closest thing they've ever come to doing that to is when the Democrats took votes to reassert the supposed right to an abortion that isn't even in the Constitution.
Yeah, but you can't. I mean, and here's, I mean, if we're just being authentic, and I'm just an authentic guy, I've seen this type of behavior happen where a judge can act with impunity and has immunity, and because these levels of immunity seem to go up, legislators have immunity, so they can actually inside trade. You have judges that have immunity; they can make bad decisions, and frankly, they could always get their pound of flesh because it takes 5 years, 6 years, 7 years in order to get justice. Well, that 7 years had already done the damage on the individual facing the court system. And
Absolutely.
then you talk about qualified immunity for police officers. You talk about immunity for big pharma and big pharma companies. We can even go back, and if I could squish it all together, talk about the Exxon Valdez and some of the improprieties that were done that caused ecological disasters that could go on for 30, 40, 50 years. And by the time it's actually adjudicated, it's a $200 million settlement, and everyone that was a plaintiff in the case is dead.
Well, Joe, what you're talking about really is an even bigger question, an even bigger fundamental problem that we face now, which is a lack of accountability.
Yes.
When you talk about immunity, immunity says you can't be held personally liable, civilly or criminally, for doing your job. There are lots of ways that we could agree to handle the problem that nobody would take jobs that could affect lots and lots of people if they thought that they were going to be sued every time, went tits up, right? But that's different from accountability. Let's put the judiciary aside just for a second, because it is a harder case. There's no accountability for anyone who works for government anymore. They don't even lose their jobs. They're not even disciplined. They make more than people in the private sector doing the same or equivalent jobs. The difference being that people in the private sector, besides making less, will lose their jobs or lose their clients or lose their licenses if they screw up. In the federal government, you get a promotion. The FBI routinely declines to prosecute its agents involved in the most heinous conduct. New administrations come in and grant money and give money back to people who've been fired for not doing the jobs or being part of nonviolent coups. There's the only thing here is that we keep sending the same clowns back to Congress who let this happen. Because you mentioned congressional immunity from insider trading. That's a matter of federal law. If the same clowns keep voting to pay themselves or allow themselves to take advantage of the system, and we keep sending them back because MAGA or because abortion, or it's really complicated, because think of all the people who are unhappy with all the compromises that Donald Trump has made. Think of all the conservatives who are unhappy with him. Think of all the Republicans who are unhappy with him. And now think of Joe Biden. There's no question about how you vote.
Yeah, but Ron, let's talk about this, because it's a lightning. What I really appreciate, and I've followed your Twitter, even though I got kicked off Twitter for a second time for nonviolent violent speech. I don't know how that works. But I follow you for a long time, and you always have these thoughtful kind of engagements. Talk about the EPA, talk about the SEC, talk about some of the other things that are happening in this kind of radicalization of or infiltration of ideology on every walk of life, every part of our walk of life. But you can't be intellectually, you can't be have a stand and be honest, intellectually honest about what's happening, and not see that this chaos is almost coordinated, because we have all this chaos in different parts, and it leads back to what's happening in the judiciary. But the judiciary, and in large part, they don't even follow it anyway. So even when a case came across where Biden was told that, hey, you're not allowed to do this, he's like, I'm going to do it anyway. So you talk about accountability, but the American people are standing back going, what is happening here? Like, what are we dealing with here? This is craziness.
Joe, one of the things that we have to keep recognizing and keep in mind is that the system ultimately operates on, we think that there are all these levers and all these systems in place. But ultimately, if people are prepared to openly steal and openly disregard the law and announce it and put it in your face, there's a limit to how much we can do if everyone's going to be on board with that level of destruction of norms. That's what's happening with all the Trump prosecutions, and the judiciary has been absolutely shameful in that regard as well. There's this idea, and conservatives are constantly saying, why don't we also do that? Well, let's also cheat. Let's also steal. Because it's a war, right? And if in World War II we bombed civilians. I mean, yeah. But guess what? What are you achieving then? Then it's just a fight. Then it's just my team versus your team. My team wins. But now we're now, kings over a destroyed moral, civil, and social landscape. So therefore, as conservatives, we're always trying to retain traditions and social structures and institutions that we have some respect for. And it's always easier to be a terrorist. It's always easier to destroy than to build and nurture and protect. So yes, we're at a disadvantage. The only advantages we have is that we're right. And when our ideas are able to get out, they convince people. God runs the world. And ultimately, he wants good to win out. And because of the human spirit, and I had a whole discussion with Michael Malice, who I think considers himself certainly an agnostic, if not an atheist. The human spirit is something that responds to truth, responds to freedom, and discussions like the one you and I are having, even though you've been shut out of social media or some aspect of social media. Well, thank God we live in America and we can have this discussion. And you can broadcast it, and then I can clip it and put it on my Twitter. And they're not going to knock me off. They're not.
Yeah. So just so you know, I got 15 million people that watch me every month. They find me. It's really kind of strange, actually. It's and we have Frank.
It's amazing. It's amazing. Thank God.
Yeah, and we have Frank speech, which they can't stop. They can't censor, which has grown dramatically. But let me ask you this question. What's the solution? How do we work this problem? How do we work it from the standpoint of the American people without getting to the point where we drop bombs on each other and we go to war,
which is not practical. It's not. There's really no way that happens. It's a super important question, and it's one that on the Ron Coleman on the Culmination podcast that I ask people all the time, especially people who've written books. I figured out what the problem is. And I always say, okay, save me a click, save me $20. Tell me how do we solve it?
Reader's Digest.
We all have angles on. So the answers are not necessarily sexy. One of them is keep having conversations like this, because those 15 million people are related to 100 million people related in socially and by blood and all kinds of things. The truth gets out. 2, we have to do the hard, boring, and sometimes nerdy work of fighting the fights and going into the courts. I mean, I went into the courts in California, in New Jersey, all over the country, fighting for the Trump campaign, fighting against the lockdowns, fighting all kinds of cases that we lose and lose and lose until we win. You don't, what is it again? You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. We have an uphill battle, but people are beginning to find ways. Nonprofits are being formed because there's the money's there. Nonprofits are being formed to fund these battles. So we have to do the boring stuff. We also have to, we have to take a look at what Scott Pressler is doing with voter registration. Number 3 is we really have to just remember who we are. The second we start, and you alluded to this, dropping bombs on each other. The second we forget who we are and what we're fighting for, start convincing ourselves that the end justifies the means, then it's just a slugfest, and the terrorists will win because they'll destroy everything in order to get and keep what they already have.
Yeah, so nobody else can have it. It's funny. We look at this from that perspective, and we never want to become the very thing that we're fighting against. But it becomes very difficult when there's a lot of people that are good conservatives. And even let's just take conservative out of the equation, just Americans, right? Just say
bingo. I'm so glad you said that. Exactly, Joe.
Because I have lots of friends who are liberals, lots of friends, and they're just amazing. But they're not on this radical left. They're like that. That's not the type of liberal that I am.
I'm in favor of civil rights. I'm in favor of affirmative action, things that reasonable people can disagree about. But are they signing on to, transgender surgery for children, family-friendly drag shows, like stuff that's just crazy? And you said let's take conservative out of it. I just saw a tweet by somebody. Donald Trump is no conservative. You're probably right. He's not. He's not such a conservative. He's just a regular American. His views reflect what regular Americans think and feel and have done for decades. It's what they called when I was a kid, the silent majority. We can't be silent anymore. People have to step up. You risk getting deplatformed because you are out there saying what you're saying and using your own real name. You've got to, one of the ways we win is by people being, we talked about the negative accountability. There has to be also a kind of positive accountability. You've got to be prepared to put your name on the line, or else nothing is going to get it solved. Your neighbor will stand up if he sees that you stand up. Your daughter-in-law will stand up when she sees her father-in-law and mother-in-law standing up. We're all in this together. If you want to be anonymous, I get it. Nobody wants to lose his job. I've lost 2 law firm partnerships as a result of standing up for what I believe in on these issues. It's cost me a lot of money. I don't feel like I have a choice. I have to save this country. I have to be part of saving this country because this is where I live. This is where my children, in all probability, are going to live. My mother came here from a country to avoid communism. We understand what we have to save.
So tell me this. Is there ever a day that you wake up and you're going, it's hopeless? I think people need to hear that it's not hopeless, that we literally, if we don't fight, we surely will lose. But if we fight, you said it before, God always wins. No matter what, you got to just have, and I'm sorry, I'm not an atheist. I am a Jewish Christian. I'm kind of a mutt, but at some point, you've got to have faith, but you have to act in that faith, don't you?
Well, look, if Orthodox Jews, when we wake up, the first thing we say before even getting out of bed is a one sentence, Moda ani lefnecha melech chai v'kayam shen b'chem rabba amunasecha. Acknowledge you, God, the living and eternal God, who has awakened me from my slumber. Your my belief in you is endless. Your trustworthiness is endless. Okay, that's how we start the day. You have to. I am guilty of being over optimistic. I've been disappointed millions of times. I've made predictions that have come wrong because I keep thinking they can't be this bad. They can't be this over the top. They can't keep jumping that shark over and over again. But God does run the world. And I do have hope every day. And Yes. The answer to your question, I suppose, is no. I never wake up and say it's hopeless. I wake up every day thinking today might be the day where we might kick some ass.
All right, so now I have to. I know you got other things to do. I have one more question I have to ask you. It has nothing to do with U.S. policy. It has everything to do with Israel's policy. The court in Israel just issued a ruling that Orthodox Jews have to serve in the military. How do you think that? I mean, I look at
Orthodox Jews have never been exempt from the military. The only exemption was for active rabbinical students.
Right.
They have a complicated history over there. There wasn't a deal that was made that at the time of the founding of the state, that in exchange for the support of the small but significant and historically very relevant Orthodox political segment, that they would give this exemption. We're talking about it the 1940s.
Yeah.
They really didn't contemplate the kind of non-fighting sector. It's a complicated issue, one that I would rather not come down on, but I will say that the Israeli Supreme Court is not a particularly impressive institution. It makes our Supreme Court look like, I don't have a good metaphor. Look unbiased, not affected by politics. It's a political organ far more than anything we have in this country. But these are complicated questions. It is going to be very interesting to see how it plays out.
I just pray that it ends peacefully and that they're able to come to some sort of, alignment, given all the other things that they're having to deal with right now.
Yeah. Well, look, the rabbinical students that they are talking about are not people who are necessarily excellent value-added military personnel.
Yeah.
So it's a political and moral issue, not a tactical or strategic or logistical one. I don't know what's going to happen.
Ron, thanks for coming on. I do appreciate you very much.
A real pleasure, Joe.
You and I do want to have you on to have more of a conversation about the election.
Sure.
And if you can talk about how do we work this problem going into November, because I do believe that a separate issue, they're lying in the polls, and so the polls are dictating that, hey, it's really, really close. And yet, everyone has gone through. We have a lot of nonprofits. You talk about nonprofits that have gone through, and their polls are completely different. They're afraid to publish those polls because they're so different than the polls that you're getting from these institutions. Rasmussen poll showed that 73% were going to vote for President Trump, and they were skeptical about publishing that poll because the social media companies and the mainstream media have such power over persuasion that they're just afraid that it would just be swept under the rug.
That's right. No, there are a lot of moving parts here. Joe, great talking to you. Thanks for having me on.
Talk to you. God bless you.
You too.
We're going to go to a commercial break. When we come back, we're going to be joined by John Tigtigan, one of the men that sat on the roof of Benghazi and in Benghazi, saving and protecting Americans for 13 hours. So we're going to have him come on and talk about where we're at in this landscape. We'll be right back.
Mike Lindell here, and like you, I see our country being destroyed daily. We face massive economic issues, and I can tell you from firsthand experience, there are people in power who threaten the values that have made our country great. Well, I've been a believer in gold and silver for a long time, and I've searched for years for a partner that shares my values. Well, Genesis Gold Group showed me how easy it is to protect your IRA, 401k, or your retirement with gold and silver. Their faith-driven approach to service and stewardship is one that stands out from the rest. So call Genesis Gold Group now at 1-800-200-GOLD. That's 1-800-200-4653, or go to LindellGoldRush.com now.
We're a community of proud, fearless patriots who aren't afraid of wearing our values on our sleeve. We are Honor Bound USA, and we proudly declare our declaration to God, family, and country. When you visit our website, you'll find a line of products that embody our commitment to pray, stand, speak, and act. As the official site for the Conservative Daily Podcast branded products, we have t-shirts to hoodies to beanies. We also have the powerful documentary from Professor David Clements, Let My People Go. Explore our collection today, because when you're honor bound, you're not just wearing a brand, you're embodying a lifestyle.
Welcome back. I wanted to make sure I had this up there. We're just going to go straight into it. I haven't talked to Tig in a while, but for those of you that don't know Tig, I can't imagine that many of you don't know him. Tig is an American hero. He's also one of my closest friends. I love him to death. Tig, welcome to the show. You're on the team at DCF Guns. You're one of the head trainers, but you're the tactical trainer. So you got a lot of cool things happening. But one of the other things you have, before I go any further, is that you have a tribute gun that you just built.
Yeah, it was with the 5150, and we're doing a limited run with this one, so there's only being 50 made, so I think there's 46 left. It's kind of like a pre-order thing right now. But yeah, it's a cool little battle rifle. It's ready. You know, if you want to do some little tricky tricks to it, it's ready for full auto if you want. So you know, it's one of those dangerous looking guns. So sorry, California peeps and New York peeps, you probably can't even look at it without going to prison. So this is what it is.
So it's got a 2-pound Hyperfire PDI trigger.
Yeah.
So it has a safety on both sides. It's customizable. You can put a suppressor on it very easily. Actually, is there a suppressor built onto it?
Well, I have some suppressors that I have made, and they're actually serial numbered to match the first 50 if you want to get the suppressor with it. So the serial numbers are TIG. Actually, I got 001. 0013 is going to a nonprofit to raise funds for homeless vets. And
One's mine. What serial number do I get?
Which I think you got numbered 3 or Josh got numbered 3. I don't remember.
Yeah, see, y'all you never take care of me. You never care.
I don't know which number you got. But anyways, so if you want, you can get actually a matching suppressor with TIG 013, TIG whatever, all the way up to at least 050 if you want. They're a little pricey, but they come with all the optics that, I mean, they're ready. They're battle ready. I mean, they're just running and gun with it right out the door.
Let me ask you a question. Is this a gun that if you were on the roof of Benghazi that you would 100% want by your side?
I use it in a tactical game, so yeah.
It's the real deal, huh?
Yeah, it's a badass little rifle. So, and the next one coming out won't be really a limited edition, but it's going to be a little bit different.
All right. But this will be the first run. It looks like actually there was 50 made and there's only 38 left.
Oh, okay. See? So they're going faster than I thought.
You can go to, let me see if I can make sure I have this website right. Yeah, let me see.
Yeah, you only get them through DCF Guns too. So their DCF is the sole distributor of them.
You have to go to dcfguns.com/TIG-rifle and it'll show up on the front page. Okay, I don't want to talk about your rifle anymore. I'm going to obviously get the rifle number that I want on this. I want to talk about, I know you well, and you have this ridiculously big heart, right? And you love everyone, even people that would step over your dead body. I've seen you have conversations with people that I wanted to punch in the face and treat them with dignity and respect, even as they are not treating you with dignity and respect. So we're heading into the 2024 election. I kind of feel like the people are coming together. We're seeing this convergence. I had a conversation with a couple of what I would consider the radical leftists last week. Now those radical leftists are actually talking to me about that this country is headed towards a dark hole. How do you see the temperature changing? It's almost as if there's no appetite for this foolishness.
I don't know. Honestly, I don't know if there's even time to really change it. I think our government is just so far lost and gone. But we can hold on to it for as long as we can. But if we don't do anything about it now, our grandkids are going to be paying definitely the the ultimate price for it. But what they did with Trump, again, they took misdemeanors and made them into felonies. Everybody even talked to that, don't even really care for Trump. Even said saying if his name wasn't Trump, the charges never would have been brought. Even the crap with Hunter Biden with his gun and all this stuff. Again, everything's so politicized in our justice system. Well, actually, I should say legal system. We haven't had a justice system in decades. It's just lost. I mean, you got judges that go off of their feelings versus the Constitution. I mean, I got DAs that have prosecuted me and didn't because of who I am, which I've been told by law enforcement. That was for the gun charge that I forgot about in my backpack when you had a Democrat up in Denver who actually brought a loaded gun and they dropped all charges on her. But again, it just depends on who you are if our legal system is actually going to charge you and prosecute you or not. So again, we're in such a bad shape. It's not even, it's insane. I mean, they allowed a felon to testify against Trump that's been known to lie consistently.
Well, and said that he was a liar. Actually told everyone he was a liar.
So to me, I mean, why they even allowed him to testify is asinine. But it just goes to show we don't have a justice system. We have a legal system. It's totally different.
We were just talking to Ron Coleman, who, by the way, is a legend when it comes to just having the patience of a saint when it comes to, taking losses and still pushing forward on cases. We talk about some of the foolishness or ridiculousness that we have going on in the country. We have a presidential debate that is tonight. And CNN is saying that no independent journalist. By the way, we will be live on Frank Speech with the debate. We will be simulcasting it and giving our commentary on the debate as it's going. We are not going to play by their rules. A presidential debate should not be something they treat like a blockbuster movie. And we're going to continue to actually talk about what's happening in our country. And we're not going to let CNN use the censorship and take it down afterwards without there being a record. So we 100% will be broadcasting it.
But so my thing is, with that also being, I mean, isn't the presidency supposed to be for the people, by the people kind of a thing? How come there's no audience? Why is there not an audience? If the presidency in this nation is for the people, why is there no audience? What's going on? I mean, again, we don't have a U.S. government anymore, really. It's a dictatorship. It really is. I mean, it's not the way our founders wanted at all. It's so ass backwards right now.
You were a Marine. You fought. You went to Benghazi. You watched two of your friends die.
Yep, from the failure of our own government.
And then you found out later that they had lied about everything.
Yep, they did. The CIA did. I know people want to blame Hillary, but again, I put the blame where it needs to be. Hillary isn't the reason why support didn't come. It's the CIA is the reason why the support didn't come, because our leadership on the ground failed to report the attacks were continuing on us. The medical bird actually got turned around by Hush, our team leader, at 1:30 in the morning after our first freaking assault on our compound. So again, our government is 100% complete failure. It does not want to save American lives anymore. It just wants to save their own ass.
I'm going to ask you the same question that I asked Ron. Ron was more apt to say that, we don't need to go to battle. But what do you see? I mean, you've been in battle. You've been in these theaters of war. You've seen a lot.
To save our country, I think that's honestly the only way. But do you want it? No. Your kids are going to die. Babies are going to die, just like what's going on over in Gaza and Ukraine. It's ugly. Would this administration unleash the full potential of a military on us? Probably, even though it's unconstitutional. But they seem to just bypass the Constitution, even with the ruling of the Supreme Court on them, pretty much disregarding our First Amendment right on social media and stuff like that. So I definitely don't want it, but to save our nation, to get it back to where it needs to be, get rid of all this communist, socialist, democratic, fascist movement, honestly, because unless we remove pretty much every department head and about 10 to 20 below them and just kind of start over, there's no saving it. Because we're so rooted in screwing each other over, being dishonest, and even screwing other nations over to think that it better us, but it doesn't. I mean, look what happened in Libya, Iraq. it totally screwed everything up. We got those people over there, for one, they only know one thing, and that's the iron fist. When we took away the iron fist, we just screwed up the whole freaking region. And we're gonna be paying for decades, in my opinion. I could say it if Trump actually would get in and do what he actually should have did the first time and really just drain that swamp. And like I said, he has the power in the executive branch to fire every department head and everyone below them. He really does. That's what his job is to do. Obviously, the court system, I don't know, unless we start taking out Soros's people, because that's how they're be able to control everything. The Democrats control the justice system through the judges, through the DAs. And same with the education. That's how we're losing our nation, is right there. You have a communist, socialist, again, these democratic fascists, demonic democratic fascists that are weaseling their way in and just destroying this nation. They're putting their opinion above the Constitution. You can watch even some of the, I would say even Republican judges do the same thing. They don't abide by the Constitution. They put their opinion in. We don't need their damn opinion. It was written out over 200 years ago, and it's been working for over 200 years until now. Well, I'd probably say a couple decades ago, but it's just really, I think 2020, COVID, the peaceful protesting of 2020, 2021 really showed the direction of our nation, and it's not good. Again, if Trump can actually truly do what he says and we get behind him and help him, because one man can't do it. One man just can't do everything. So unless we actually get Republicans in office that are not rhinos, that are not freaking Kissingers, whatever the hell that dude's name is, that they said he has courage for coming out. That's not courage, for one. That's just being a person. But unless people are truly, really ready to go, nothing's going to happen. It's going to be a war.
Well, my fear is that is the case, but the hopeful part of me states that if we stand in force and we stand in solidarity as Americans, set aside this Democrat, Republican, and just step away from ideologies, I think we'll have a better chance of actually not going to a place of war. But after we've done so much harm to so many countries around the world, it's hard to tell where the enemies can come from. We have open borders, we have fentanyl on the streets, we have homelessness that is through the roof, which is mostly caused by mental illness and drug use. And then you talk about the other things about taxes. I mean, taxes are 56 cents on every dollar, between 51 and 56 cents on every dollar. It means you're less than a half a person. If you were to pay your taxes in full, you wouldn't get a paycheck until July.
I mean, I don't know about anywhere else, but look at all these. I mean, just here in Colorado, look at all these people driving around with 0 license plates. I got dirt bikes, 4-wheelers, just driving up and down Powers and Constitution all over the freaking place around here. But yet I get a letter saying I got to renew my tags on my motorcycle, which I drive maybe 4 months out of the year for $500. And I'm debating if I'm even going to pay for it. Like, why should I? Yeah, people have never even paid for plates to get on their car. They got, again, bikes that are not even legal to be on the road, driving up and down the main freaking roads. But yet I got to pay taxes on this stuff.
Well, I do think it's time. I think it's time that we stop paying taxes.
Honestly, I do too. I didn't file my taxes and probably till like a month ago because I was debating on if I was even going to do it or not.
Well, Joe Bannister came on yesterday and said there's no obligation for us to pay federal income tax. There's no obligation. So that's 20 to 25% of your income that goes to federal income tax. So why should we pay them? Why should we pay them to do the harm that they have done to us as Americans? And I keep going back and forth going, how much more money would I put? How blessed would our employees be if they didn't pay federal taxes?
No, it'd be a huge difference. That's a huge difference. It's another, for some people, it's another level of a lifestyle.
People are struggling to make their car payment, struggling to pay their mortgage or their house payment. And the first thing that comes off the top is not a tithe to God. It's a money to the state and to the government.
And to Ukraine.
For what?
And the Taliban. Was it the Taliban's getting what, $41 million a month of our money?
Yeah.
People realize that?
So this is one of the questions that we're going to be asking. And I was talking to a friend yesterday because I did talk to my accountant. And he's like, Joe, you don't have to pay federal taxes, but you're opting out of a lot of stuff. He said, you won't get Social Security. I mean, there's a bunch of things you won't get. And I was like, well, illegals have not paid in. They're getting money. If Ukrainians are getting SSI, they didn't pay in.
Yep.
So only Americans that decide to opt out of paying taxes so that other people can have a good life, only those people will be opted out of it.
Yeah. What are the illegals up in Denver getting? Like $1,000 a month?
$1,430.
And free housing?
And free housing. And food. And.
So it's asinine. It is, again, like I said, I almost did it, but this, again, next year, it might be it. I might pound sand. I'm not doing it.
But I think that, I mean, Tig, the reason why I'm bringing this up is that so my friend yesterday said, Joe, what about Wesley Snipes? Wesley Snipes, perfect example.
Yeah.
And Wesley Snipes, I went through and looked at his entire case. He literally falsified documents to get money back from the government on income that he never actually pushed to begin with. It had nothing to do with stop paying taxes.
Oh, he stole from the government.
Yeah, he tried to steal from the government. Got caught. What's that?
Yeah, that's a big difference.
Yeah. So, I mean, I look at these cases and I go, all right.
No, I agree. Like I barely just filed because I didn't want to do it. I really did not want to freaking pay I pay my taxes every time I get a paycheck, every time I go buy stuff, my mortgage. I'm done. It's asinine. I mean, you never own anything. You can never truly own anything in this country no more. Nothing. You're always paying for it. You pay your house off, you're paying for it. Pay your car off, you got to pay for it. Everything you're paying for, no matter what. You die, you got to pay to die now. It's stupid.
Yeah. So I actually am going to start encouraging people to at least look into it, to look into paying taxes.
Not paying taxes.
Not paying taxes. Yeah.
No, I agree.
There are taxes by statute you have to pay, right? I just want everybody to know there are certain statutes or taxes you have to pay.
It's just do a flat tax.
All right. Hey, listen, we gotta pop out. All right, Tig, you want to pray or you want me to pray?
No, go ahead, man.
Are you sure?
I'm sure.
You don't want to pray? I mean, I'm all about it if you want to pray.
No, maybe next time.
Well, then I'll probably have you on tomorrow so I can make you do it next time. All right, here we go. Oh, man. Father God, thank you. Thank you for Tig. Thank you for Ron. Thank you for the courage that they have. Thank you for the way that they serve. Father, I thank you for what Tig did when he sat on that roof. I thank you for what he did in 2020 when he stood up against Antifa and did everything he could to protect the community. Father, I thank you for the selfless sacrifice is just a part of his character. It's just who he is. I thank you, Father, that you've reached into his heart and healed things that need to be healed, and that you've blessed him in his life with a beautiful wife and amazing children. Father, we're grateful for Ron going to court and not losing hope, for him being a wealth of knowledge, but also being honest with people about what needs to happen next while giving us a plan forward. These two men, Father, two of others that you have put out there on this path of restoration with courage and commitment and a selfless sacrifice to do whatever it takes. So, Father, I ask you to bless them with health, your hand on them, that you may lift any burdens of hopelessness or malcontent. Father, I ask you to give Tig the ability to thrive and to teach others the skills that he has, but also to be a leader and to continue to lead and continue to show others what needs to be done in order to protect our communities and our children. Father, I ask you to bless those that are listening. I ask you to bless those people that are listening, that they may feel the urge to step in the gap and to do the work that you ask them to do individually and collectively. And Father, I ask you to bless us as a nation, that we may continue to plow the fields and knock down the weeds and all the bad things that we've let grow up in our communities, and that we may be honest about what is happening and may challenge those people that want to do evil, but also push that evil forcefully back into the hole it came from. Father, I ask these things humbly in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Until then, Tig, go back to teaching people how to knock down bad guys.
Right.
All right.
You got to show up.
God bless you, brother.
You too.
All right. So that's it for us today. I do want you to know that God is at the wheel. We'll see you tonight for the debate. God bless you.
It's the guts and it's the glory. 100 stripes, 100 stories. It's the Pledge of Allegiance on the 4th of July. It's them handwritten letters from home. It's them sleepless nights alone. It's his newborn baby he left with his wife. Mr. Red, White, and Blue.